The ride with Mary. There are nights when the road feels endless, when the headlights carve out nothing but empty stretches of pavement, and the radio can't fill the silence that creeps in from the dark. Driving a cab in Chicago at the turn of the millennium meant I knew those nights well. The city never truly slept, but its rhythm changed after midnight. The noise dulled, the crowds thinned, and the streets themselves seemed to breathe differently, as though the asphalt carried secrets best left unspoken. I remember one particular night clearer than most. The air was damp, carrying the chill of late autumn. Street lamps glowed weakly, halos blurred by a thin mist that hovered just above the ground. The windshield wipers scraped occasionally, brushing away condensation, but they couldn't quite keep the glass clear. My cab smelled faintly of stale cigarettes, old leather, and the lingering traces of too many cheap colognes left behind by passengers. The road stretched long and quiet. My headlights illuminated patches of cracked pavement, the edges dissolving into shadow. Neon signs flickered over shuttered storefronts, their buzzing faint against the weight of the night. Every turn felt heavier, every block more isolated. That was when I saw her. She stood at the side of Archer Avenue, near Resurrection Cemetery. The mist coiled around her legs, clinging to the hem of her white dress. She didn't move at first, didn't wave me down like most passengers would. She just stood there, motionless, her pale figure almost glowing against the dark backdrop of trees and headstones beyond. Something in me hesitated. The stories I had heard in bars, whispered by other drivers, pressed at the back of my mind. But work was work, and instinct took over. My tires crunched against the gravel shoulder as I pulled up beside her. When she entered the cab, the air shifted. A coldness followed her, not the kind you feel with an open window or faulty heater, but a deeper chill that settled into my bones. The smell changed too. My cab no longer carried the stale odor of cigarettes. Instead, there was the faint scent of earth, damp and raw, like freshly turned soil. I glanced into the rearview mirror. Her face was pale, her features delicate, framed by waves of dark hair that fell across her shoulders. She looked young, maybe 20 at most. Her eyes seemed distant, fixed not on me or the road, but on something far away, something I couldn't see. The road stretched ahead, narrowing into the mist. The street lamps grew sparser, and the trees pressed closer to the edges of the asphalt. The cab's headlights cut through the fog, but it felt as though the darkness absorbed more than they revealed. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles pale against the vinyl. She sat perfectly still in the back seat. Not once did she shift or fidget. Not once did she lean forward or glance around as most passengers did. She was silent, and yet her presence filled the cab completely. The rearview mirror seemed to tilt toward her no matter how often I adjusted it, as though the glass itself wanted to keep her in view. The ride felt longer than it should have. The road was one I knew well, a stretch I had driven countless times, but it seemed to lengthen in her presence. Each curve bent farther than memory allowed. Each intersection appeared unfamiliar, swallowed by fog that never quite lifted. The silence pressed harder. The hum of the engine seemed muted, distant, as though the cab itself was muffled under some heavy blanket. My ears strained for sound, for anything familiar, but all I heard was my own breathing, and the faint rhythm of tires rolling across damp asphalt. When I dared to glance in the mirror again, I saw her lips move. Not words, not sound, just the subtle parting of lips, the shape of syllables that never reached the air. Her eyes locked with mine through the glass for a moment, and I felt something pull deep inside my chest, an ache that wasn't physical, as though my heart had skipped not one beat, but several. I blinked, and her gaze shifted back to the window, her reflection blurred with the streaks of condensation on the glass. The cab smelled stronger now, the scent of damp earth thickening until I almost gagged. The ride stretched on. My hands were slick with sweat on the steering wheel. My breath fogged faintly in the cold air, though the heater still hummed at my feet. I couldn't tell if we were nearing the end of the road or if the night had folded in on itself, trapping us in an endless loop of mist and shadows. And then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone. One moment, she sat in the back seat, her pale figure stark against the dark interior. The next, the seat was empty. No sound, no shift, no sign of a door opening or closing. Just absence. The air in the cab lightened slightly, though the smell lingered, faint but undeniable. My heart pounded in my chest. My breath came in shallow gasps. I pulled over, hands trembling on the wheel, staring into the empty back seat through the mirror. The leather was uncreased, untouched, as though no one had sat there at all. The road stretched on in silence, mist curling lazily across the pavement. The cemetery gates loomed in the distance, their iron bars faintly gleaming in the headlights. The trees beyond swayed slightly, though no breeze touched my skin. I didn't drive again that night. I sat there for what felt like hours, the weight of her presence still clinging to me, the echo of her silent lips moving, replaying in my mind. Even now, years later, I remember that ride. I remember the way the air changed, the way the road stretched unnaturally, the way the silence grew heavier than any sound could be. But most of all, I remember the way she vanished, not as though she had left, but as though she had never been there at all. And sometimes, when I drive near Archer Avenue on nights when the mist clings to the ground and the lamps burn weak halos into the dark, I catch a glimpse in the mirror. Not a face, not a body, just the faint outline of a figure in white, waiting for another ride. The creature by the tracks. Railroads at night are lonelier than any road or highway I've ever driven. They stretch across the earth like scars, narrow lines of steel that vanish into the dark, carrying with them the memory of countless journeys, departures, and endings. I had walked the tracks many times in my life, but there was one night in the early 2000s when I learned what it meant to feel watched by something that didn't belong to the world as I knew it. It was in Illinois, near a stretch of old freight lines that cut through small towns and empty fields. The area was quiet after dark, the kind of quiet that feels intentional, as though the land itself is holding its breath. The night air was cool, heavy with the dampness of early spring. A thin mist clung to the ground, curling around my boots as I followed the rails. The smell was sharp and metallic, the kind that always lingers near train tracks, as though the very earth had absorbed the taste of rust. The wooden ties beneath the rails were slick with dew, their surfaces softened by years of weather and weight. Every step I took echoed faintly, not against buildings or trees, but into the emptiness itself. The silence was vast, swallowing even the sound of my breathing. I had gone further than usual that night, drawn deeper along the path of steel, my flashlight beam slicing through the mist. The light trembled slightly in my hand, catching the glint of the rails, catching the sheen of wet stone, but failing to reveal anything beyond a few yards ahead. The darkness was thick, unyielding, as though it had weight of its own. That was when I noticed the change. The air shifted, the silence thickened. It wasn't just quiet anymore, it was absolute, a silence that felt intentional, pressing against my ears until they rang. The usual sounds of the night were gone. No crickets, no rustle of wind through grass. Even the distant hum of town lights seemed to fade, leaving me stranded in something unnatural. My skin prickled. The hairs along my arms and neck rose. I froze, my breath shallow, the beam of my flashlight quivering as I swept it across the tracks. Something moved. At first it was only a suggestion, a ripple of shadow against shadow at the edge of the light. I told myself it was the mist shifting, a trick of the beam reflecting off the rails. But then it moved again, deliberate, low to the ground, crawling. I angled the light sharper, narrowing the beam, and for the first time I saw it. The creature crouched beside the tracks, pale and angular, its limbs bent wrong, too long, too thin. Its skin was stretched taut across its frame, a sickly gray-white that seemed almost translucent in the light. The head turned slowly, unnaturally, as if its neck lacked the limits of bone. Its eyes glowed red, not like reflection, not like the way an animal's eyes catch light in the dark. These glowed from within, steady and unnatural, two burning coals fixed directly on me. My breath caught. My chest refused to rise. The creature held still, crouched low, its long fingers splayed against the gravel beside the tracks. The mist curled around its form, clinging to it, as though the night itself was reluctant to let it go. For a moment, we remained locked there, neither of us moving. My flashlight beam shook across its body, catching the glisten of damp skin, the twitch of muscles just beneath the surface. Its head tilted, jerky and sharp, studying me with those eyes that burned without heat. The silence deepened. The ringing in my ears grew louder, until I couldn't tell if it was sound or pressure. My hands trembled, the beam of light faltering, and in that falter, the creature moved. It didn't step. It didn't crawl. It shifted. One moment crouched, the next a few feet closer, as though the space between us had folded in on itself. The gravel beneath its limbs was undisturbed. No sound of movement carried through the air. It simply was nearer, and those burning eyes filled more of my vision. My legs wanted to run, but the tracks stretched on endlessly, swallowed by fog ahead and behind. My body remained frozen, locked by something older than fear, something that knew instinctively I should not move. The creature rose slowly. Its limbs unfolded in unnatural angles, joints bending the wrong way, spine arcing as it straightened to its full height. Taller than any man I'd ever seen, its frame cast a shadow even against the mist, a silhouette jagged and wrong. The skin across its chest stretched with each breath, ribs visible, sharp and inhuman. The smell reached me then, not just rust and dampness, but something acrid, sour, like spoiled meat left to rot in stagnant water. It filled my nose, my mouth, clinging to the back of my throat until I gagged silently. The creature swayed slightly, its head cocked too far to one side, eyes unblinking, fixed. Then came the sound. A hiss. Low at first, a breath pushed through clenched teeth. But it grew, deepened, layering on itself, until it wasn't a hiss at all but a chorus of whispers. Too many voices overlapping, speaking in tones too broken to understand. The air vibrated with it, the rails beneath my boots trembling faintly, the mist shivering as though stirred by invisible hands. My flashlight sputtered, flickering in my grip, and in that flicker, the creature vanished. Not gone, not escaped, moved. It was beside the tracks now, closer still, crouched again, those burning eyes inches above the steel rail. Its long fingers curled over the iron, nails tapping lightly, rhythmically, the sound echoing far louder than it should have. I stumbled back, my boot striking against the wooden ties, the sound sharp in the silence. The creature's head snapped toward me at the noise, the movement so sudden, so violent, I felt the air shift against my skin. The whispers rose to a scream. Not sound exactly, but pressure, vibration, rattling through my skull, shaking my vision until the world blurred. My chest heaved. My knees buckled. The flashlight fell from my hand, its beam spinning wildly across gravel, across steel, across mist, and then across nothing at all. When the beam steadied, the creature was gone. The mist swirled lazily across the tracks. The rails gleamed faintly in the scattered light. The silence pressed heavy once again, the ringing in my ears slowly dulling to a faint throb. My breath came ragged, sharp and shallow, my throat raw with the effort of drawing air. I didn't move for a long time. My body shook, sweat cold against my skin despite the chill of the night. I stared into the mist, waiting for the glow of red eyes to return, for the shifting of shadow against shadow. But the night remained still. When I finally turned back, retracing my steps along the rails, the walk felt longer than it ever had before. Every crunch of gravel beneath my boots echoed too far. Every breath of mist seemed to curl too close. I never looked behind me. I couldn't. To this day, I can't walk near train tracks at night. The smell of rust, the sight of mist curling across steel, it all brings back that silence, that pressure, that moment of being locked in the gaze of something that should not exist. Sometimes, when the night is especially still, I swear I hear it again, the faint tapping of nails against iron, rhythmic and deliberate. And when I do, I know the creature by the tracks is still there, waiting for another wanderer to step too far into its silence.